Well, I think let's have a comment. Okay, so let's start it. So today, the presenter is Éva Holb, and he's coming from Corvinus University, and it will be a field experiment. Yeah, so it will be a field experiment.
So thank you very much, and thank you for having me. So as mentioned, this is a field experiment, and this is a joint project together with Barna Bakó and Éva Holb. It's about loss aversion. So the outline is pretty standard. So I'm just going to give a brief literature review. I will go into relatively extensive on the experimental design. Then I will head into the data and show some results. Okay, so the motivation of the whole thing, it can be summarized in sentence. Really, can we induce students to perform better by taking away points instead of giving them? So the only thing that we're doing is that we're endowing points to students, and so every time they make an error, we subtract that point from them. And we want to see whether this loss aversion idea, we know this from Kahneman, that there's an endowment effect, and from the endowment effect there's a loss aversion effect. Whether this loss aversion is strong enough to induce an extensive learning for the students, and because of there is an extensive learning, they will perform better. That's the whole idea for the whole experience. So unfortunately, we weren't the first ones who came up with this idea. It would have been better, but so what I want to emphasize is that the literature is really not clear on what the effects are. So there are mixed evidence. So the first one was B.S. Hernandez in 2012, but they found that it had negative learning effect. So a student really didn't like this system, and essentially they scored worse when they were losing points instead of gaining these points. However, there were critiques such as Smith here that said that, okay, but they didn't really take into account the individual characteristics of the students. So in fact, that's might not be a good result. There were several papers which said that there is a positive effect of losing points when we are scoring against the losing points. These were the most important one. Very interestingly, Apostolova Mihailova was the first one who actually looked at how the scoring itself matters, whether we are losing or gaining points. And what they found was that there was no difference between losing and gaining points. However, there is a difference between the genders. So females reacted more strongly to that, and because of that, they tended to perform better. But overall, the treatment was not significant. Now, that was the first result for these experiments. But all the other experiments, McAvoy, Smith, they found no heterogeneous gender effects, but they found significant differences between the treatments. So again, the literature is really not clear on how to do this, whether there's a positive effect or a negative effect, or whether there is heterogeneous gender effects or not. And finally, this is just loosely connected to that. There has been experiments which emphasize the reference points. So, for example, Levitt and others in 2016, what they did is like, okay, you did a low stakes test in December, and in February you had to perform better than that. And they were doing it whether so students were incentivized monetarily, non-monetarily, and were not incentivized at all. And they were also did a loss gain treatment as well. What they found that was, it was not really the loss gain treatment that was important, but the reference point itself. So having the reference point and incentivizing it. And something very similar happened with Lewis in last year's experiment. Okay, so these are the main hypotheses that we're working with. The first one is that we want to show that framing effect, so actually framing as in losses for so framing losses for the errors actually has an impact on learning. So we hypothesize that if students are endowed with the points and they start losing points with each error, they will perform better because they are afraid of losing points. So that's the first hypothesis. We hypothesize the second one is that whether there are gender differences or not, we say that there are gender differences in loss aversion. That's what we want to test. And the third one is loss aversion has a diminishing effect. So far, we do not really know whether this has been tested before. So we wanted to test whether, so the argument can be made that there is a difference between losing and gaining points just because losing points is very unorthodox. So it's something very different that you're used to. Instead of, you gain points, that's how we've been in the school system for the past 12 years. But whether this effect is due to simply that, oh, this is something different, and yeah, I don't like losing points. So, and whether this in time will be any different. And also it can be argued that for the first 4 weeks, some students might say, okay, well, I'm losing points, but in fact, nothing is different. It's just being reframed. So actually, there's no difference whether I'm losing or gaining. So we want to test whether this effect is diminishing. Okay, so as I've learned, you have to spoil your results at the beginning. So the first one, we partially confirm that. So we have some suggestive evidence throughout the semester, but we have evidence for the exam scores as well. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I thought I could see. Okay, second, for gender differences, we find no evidence. So we find no evidence for differences between females and males. And finally, whether there's a diminishing effect for loss aversion. Let's go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh. So finally, we find no evidence for diminishing effect. Okay, so I was just going to the experimental design. So we did this whole experiment with business administration and management students at Corvinus. And we did this for a macroeconomics class for around 420-ish students. So what we did was that we went into the lecture and we informed them that they are going to be part of a methodological, teaching methodological experiment. We didn't want to spoil, of course, the treatment, so we said that, okay, this is going to be an experiment about the methodology, but we also emphasized that there won't be any differences for the grading itself, so everyone has to do the same work. The tests are going to be the same, they're standardized, and there's no difference among these groups. So yeah, that was the first part. And we also went into the seminars, or rather, we primed them at the seminars for their each and so their treatments. I will talk about the treatments in a bit. First, we asked for their agreement and for the data. For example, we had to ask them what's their gender because we can't really know that from their Neptune code. And to do this, we use just a survey on Qualtrics, in which we also asked them a couple of other questions as well, which we thought would be very important for this experiment. So out of the 420, 320 actually agreed to take part in the experiment. And they were surveyed 2 times. The first one at the first lecture, and the second one was at the end of the whole semester. So after they then done the final exam, we asked them to please fill out this survey and do that. Unfortunately, around 120 of them did so. So we lost a lot of people there, but we can kind of use that data as well. So again, the experiment was investigated and permitted by the Corvinus Ethics Committee. So we got permission from them. And also, we also informed the Students' Union, or HOOC, that we're doing this experiment because we didn't really want to get into trouble with the Students' Union. And they actually said that, okay, go ahead and good luck. So that was a very positive experience. Okay, the novelty is that primarily what they've done in the literature is they were working with 2 treatments. So there was those who gain points. I will just call this treatment the gain treatment. So that's the regular control treatment. You do your coursework and you get points, and at the end you get a grade. And there was the loss treatment, which was you started with the maximum points endowed to you. So you started with 100%, and with each error you done, you got that point got subtracted from that. That is the whole point. But what we did this hybrid group. So what we did here is we switched for the final exam. So throughout this the semester for the seminar tests, these hybrid groups were actually gaining points. So they got a positive feedback for their for the tests, and at the final exam, they were losing points. So we said them, okay, there's the maximum point, and you will lose points for each incorrect answer. And we thought that this would be very useful for this fading exam. So if this is really just a status quo effect, or having something very similar, then there would be a difference at the end of this semester, right? Because then the first loss treatment would just get used to it and said, okay, this is just a framing effect. But the hybrid one would actually encounter that first time at the end of the semester. So they would just get then get the treatment. We originally wanted to do it that way, that throughout the semester you're gaining points, and then you're losing those points for the final exam, which would have been even nicer, because then we could have tested this endowment effect, or whether just giving out the points is actually a strong endowment. Unfortunately, we couldn't do that because of the whole structure of the course. I will just get into that in a second. But I really want to do that in the future.
And I'm wondering whether you had problems because you prime students in the seminars, but they speak not just with the seminar members, but with other students. So some students might have complained that, right, I don't want this game, I want to be. So did you have such issues?
Not that. So we haven't had any complaints. Of course, there was some contamination. We actually, for the final questionnaire, we asked them whether they knew about the other treatments, and I just put that knowledge at the dummy in the regression, and actually didn't make much of a difference. So I know it's not perfect, but it's somewhat reassuring. Okay, so these were the 3 treatments that we were working with. So the thing was that they were writing 4 tests throughout the semester, and they were writing 1 final exam at the end of the semester. The structure of the course was such that out of the 4 tests, only the 3 best counted. So because of that, and because there's an uneven point system between them, we couldn't really do this endowment effect testing. So that was a shame, but still we could test whether this status quo argument would hold. So for the gain treatment, they were gaining 48 points from the tests and 40 points from the exam, and there were 12 points from homeworks as well. So in total, there was 100 points for the whole course.
So the homeworks are only gain, right?
Sorry?
The homeworks there were only gain, so everybody's.
Yeah, okay. So the issue with homeworks was that the homeworks were implemented on Moodle. And apparently Moodle can't handle negative points. I even tried to program it, and I went to the IT guys and they said that, well, we're only doing this during the summertime, so we won't be able to implement this, and we're against it, and we don't want to work with that. So what we had to do was we left that in, but actually it doesn't make any difference. You will see in the summary statistics, because apparently these homeworks are very easy. So pretty much everyone done it, and yeah, so there's not a lot of variance in that. We could see whether there is so if you sat down for 5 minutes, you could done the homework, and so there was not that big of an incentive on dropping it. What we could do was see whether these completions were different across the treatment, but we didn't find it. So so that's what it is. So for the last one, we said to them that, okay, you have 48 points for the seminar test, and you have 40 points for the exam, and every incorrect answer was a negative point. And actually the student, or rather the seminar leaders, had to grade the tests on paper. So what they had to do is actually write a -5 instead of, just 10 points for that particular test. Which was something that they were not really happy about. But yeah. And finally, there was the hybrid group. For the hybrid group throughout the semester, throughout the seminar test, they were just gaining points, and at the final exam, they handled they had the final test, and they said, okay, you're starting from 40 points, and you get -points from there. And pretty much that was it. So this is the same thing but with text. So what we also did, so at the first lecture, we said that, okay, you're going to take part in an experiment, but for further instructions, go to your seminar leaders. And the seminar leaders were, so for each treatment, we did separate syllabi. So there was one which was framed as gains, so just the usual one, okay, you do your coursework, you get 16 points for each seminar test, and this is the scoreboard. We did one for the losing treatment as well. The text was pretty much the same, just framing it as a loss. And finally, there was a hybrid one, which was the combination. In addition to that, there is this tradition of just uploading the results in an Excel sheet on Moodle. So at the beginning of the semester, because we were sure that there might be a couple of people, there can be a lot of people who actually don't read the syllabus, we uploaded this Excel file, and we gave an idea or gave an example to them on what to expect. So this is the loss treatment. the Excel of the loss treatment. We said, okay, this is Ló or Kovács János, I don't remember the original name, but we said that, okay, he did pretty well on the first 3 tests. For the 4th test, he didn't really care about that and lost a lot of points. And at the 40-point exam, he lost 10 points. So this is his total score. And this is how you get the, and yeah, I think there was something about the homework as well. Yeah, sorry, no, we said that excluding the homework, that was the total points. Yes?
Clarification, so, was the treatment connected to seminars? I mean,
Yes.
and what did you do?
Yes, so we randomly assigned the seminars in the way that fortunately a lot of teachers held multiple seminars.
Okay,
So what we did was if someone held 3 seminars, then one of them had a hybrid, another one was a gain, and the final one was a loss. If they had 2 seminars that we had to just evaluate it, we sat down with the course leader and we assigned the groups accordingly. So we tried to balance it out so the teachers themselves could be used as fixed effect. So yeah, but thank you, good question. Yeah, pretty much. Yes.
Do you have some details about the tests? So were this yes or no type of test? So was it possible that the marking was influenced by the grading system, or was it really objectively?
So it was, they had to calculate things. So, and so these tests were pretty much standardized. So there was no difference between the tests themselves. The only difference was that, okay, they had to correct it. And at the end, the teachers had to say, okay, it's not 11 points, but it's -5 points. So they had to just switch them, but it's not supposed to be that. So that problem shouldn't rise here.
Did you check whether there was any effect of the timing of the seminar? Like
Yes,
maybe, you know, someone has 3 seminars, one is Friday morning, maybe
Yes.
those students won't
yes,
perform that.
yes. Actually, we tested that in the regression. I will come back to that. So yeah, there were seminars on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So yeah, you would expect that those who did it on Tuesday would perform worse because they didn't know what to expect, and there is obviously some communication with the students. Mostly there wasn't any effect for the timing of the seminars. I don't know if I included those coefficients in the regression, but I'm sure in the couple of minutes. Okay, summary statistics. So these are the variables that we were working with. These are the first 4 tests. The seminar test, and there was this final test.
Sorry,
Yes,
I thought that the 321 is a survey, right? So, so you had 423 students participating in it.
in total, yeah.
So, these balance statistics, you're only showing it for those who you have survey data for.
Yes.
You should show it for everybody for the balance things.
Okay, so
So you're
Yeah.
right now focusing only on those where you have survey data background.
good point.
But the treatment is actually not based on the survey data, based on everybody. So randomization is based on the full sample, right?
Right, good point. I didn't think of it in the slides, but what I did pretty much was run similar regressions with the 420 versus 320 students, and there were not significant differences on the effects. Unfortunately, it would be a bit distorted because we don't know a lot of things about the 420 students. For example, we don't know their gender, actually, so we had to survey them. Good point. And yeah, we were arguing with Philip actually that whether I could show this that 420 students because yeah,
They never agreed.
yeah, but good point. So these were the 4 tests. The interesting thing is that well, the median and mean are pretty high, so around 70%. So these are like Corvinus students, these are smart students. So they did pretty well. Some tests better than others. For the final test, it was still around 70%. The average was around still 70% or 68% population.
Excuse me, did they learn the result of the tests before the next test?
Yes, they-
So was it possible, like in the case of this student, that you've shown that after 3 successful tests, the student said, "Oh, I don't need to prepare for the fourth one."
yeah, that was the case. So they knew it beforehand. So yeah, there is this strategic behavior. For that, what we did was actually not test, well, we tested for the individual ones, but we also tested for the 3 best tests in the seminar. Because in that way, the objective function is pretty much the same for all students. So they want to maximize the points received for the 3 best tests. So that's how we could just get rid of that strategic decision. So so yeah, for the homework, out of the 12 points, the average was 10.5. So they did pretty much all of them. What was interesting here is that, like, okay, these are the treatment groups. So the distribution is around 34%, around 40%, and 26%. So they were a bit lower on the hybrid side, but still we had around 90-ish observations for that treatment. We asked for their mother's education level. So, and 75 of them had their mothers had university education level. So a bit selected, but you would expect that. This is very important. We asked them whether they knew how, or whether they learned in secondary school how to take derivatives. Why is this important? Because if they learned in secondary school how to take derivatives, they were at the higher level math classes. Because on the lower level you don't learn anything taking derivatives. So there is a difference between them, and they being business administration and management students, they can either take for the graduation higher level of maths and higher level of history. So this would be a very important difference between them. And we could argue that those who knew how to take derivatives would be better at math.
Was this practically useful?
Um,
Solving the problems?
Yes, it is. Like so it wasn't significant for the tests, only at the part where they were learning about the Solomon, where they had to take derivatives. And then we could find the difference.
A minor question, what's the difference between total score and final score?
Okay, the total score and final score was so this accounts for here we took the 3 best tests. And for the final score, we took the 3 best tests, and for the total score, all the. Okay.
Actually, following up on this question, but it's related. There's a paper by Roman Monontai where he studied how high school performance influenced engineering students' success rates of graduation, and he found that the highest impact on that was their results from history in high school, not maths or natural sciences, but history. So I wonder if indeed the maths background is more useful or more important than the history, even in tests where mathematics seems important.
So I mean, good point. The thing is that, like, the admission points for getting into Corvinus is really high. So I would argue that there's not much difference between students. So these are all very good students here at the top. I would guess that this is again just a proxy for their skill levels. It might be useful to control for the history.
Yes, that is Hungarian students or international?
No, they were Hungarian students, all Hungarian students. Yeah. Okay, yeah, 52% of them were females. We actually asked them whether they worked throughout the semester or not, which was interesting because for the regression it was significant, but at the end it did not really alter the treatment. So that is also.
What did you mean by working?
So we asked them whether they took part-time jobs throughout the semester. And
What
that's,
did you mean by part managers?
I mean, whether they were in like, trainership program. So, you know, the usual university students, part-time jobs.
Is that no, I work full time.
Yeah, okay, and we also, so, yeah, they took similar number of classes all semester. They took similar amount of credits this semester because these are first year students, so there's not a lot of variance in that. And yeah, we also have information on what the time slot is for their seminars. So this is the balance for the three treatments. And what we can find is, so there is some difference in the not working. And also, but otherwise it was pretty balanced throughout the whole thing. And there was a difference on when the time slots were. So we have to control for them in the regression. And also it could be otherwise very important just to, you know, just to control for the flow of information.
How many treatment classes you have altogether?
We had 14. So we had more than 10, that's for sure. Like I remember around 14, but I'm not sure.
Altogether, so it's like
Yes,
554 or something.
something like that. Okay, so these are just very suggestive evidences. These are kernel density plots for the first four seminar tests. Now, there's not a lot of difference between these. What I found really interesting is that the modus of the distribution here, so the blue line is the loss treatment. So for the first one, it was a bit leftwards compared to the all the others. Again, not statistically significant, but they were still underperforming. But after the first one, they shifted to the right. A bit, again, not statistically significant, but there was a clear shift, and it's very emphasized here. So I think there could be two reasons for this. The first one being that, which we want to avoid, is that, okay, I did relatively worse in the first test, so I will have to maximize my points in these ones. And the second one is, okay, I received the treatment here. I saw that I lost 5 points. It's really unpleasant, so I will work harder for the next seminars. So to avoid this, what we did was, again, the objective function is just to maximize the scores from 3. So we just did a box plot for the 3 scores. So the 3 best scores for the seminar tests. Not a lot of difference. There might be some difference in between the gain and the loss. Again, in this space between the gain and the hybrid, so these two, these were essentially the same treatments, so they were all gaining points. So these are relatively similar. We're happy about that. So yeah, there might be some effect for the loss here.
So I'm guessing you tried pairwise comparison of significance, but did you try whether merging the hybrid and the gain together here and comparing to the loss? Whether it's significant?
No, I haven't. I thought about that, I haven't really got into that, but yeah, I will do that. It would be interesting. The way I did this, because the next slide is about the seminars. Oh, so the final exam.
It's here too, yeah.
So what can be seen here is that the hybrid is shifted to the right, which is actually what we would expect. So it's something good, and it's relatively similar to the loss, which is again something very nice. And also we can see that yeah, there's a more clear difference between the loss and the gain. But other than that, this is just suggestive evidence. There are other factors that we could take into account, and
What happens in Székesfehérvár?
yeah, so there were 2 seminar groups from Székesfehérvár, which were significantly how should I? They were underperforming. So, and mainly they were in the game group. So if I would put Székesfehérvár in here, this would go like here and artificially the difference would be higher. So I wanted to filter this out for these descriptors. Yes.
How do you handle people who drop out? So in the middle of the semester, they say, I mean, I'm sure we've all had students that show up to the first test and then they get zeros the rest of the semester. I see these dark points.
So I checked for them in the robustness test. And the way I did that, and I did not drop them out for the analysis. The reason is that I don't know whether that's a feature in the treatment itself. So if you were in the last treatment, you got 88 points. So you felt that, okay, I'm actually earning a 5. I don't want to lose that. So I will more inclined to work with it. What I also did was I run a regression. I run regressions where for the final test, I omitted out those who did not earn any points. And the differences were smaller, obviously, because the distribution just getting closer to that. So there is no data on here. But other than that, I mean, I could argue that it's the part of the treatment that it is more likely that in the grain group, more people would drop out compared to the loss group. So that's why I didn't do anything. But I was really torn on this decision.
Can you see if they dropped out, like actually dropped out after that semester?
What do you mean? So like
They left the degree program.
the degree program? Well, yeah. From the data I have. But yeah, good point. Okay, so running regressions on the individual tests. What we find here is that the treatments had actually no effect in the seminar sessions. So there is not a big difference. Only in the second one, there is a significant difference between them. But that also can be due to the strategic behavior. So, but consequently, for the final test, we see positive significant difference for the last treatment compared to the gain treatment. And this is actually a pretty big effect. So this is out of 40 points, 4 points, that's 10%, which actually makes a difference of grade. So that's a huge effect. And in the literature, what they found was closer to 4 percentage points difference between groups. So this is really big. There was no effect for the time slots, only in one case. Also, there is little to no effect to knowing how to take derivatives, only in the test where they actually had to take derivatives, which would actually make sense. Yeah, and throughout the semester, females tended to perform better. And
So
this is kind of
do you control for the test scores in the last regression?
good point. I will get to that in a couple of minutes. So actually, to look at the so to take out the strategic decision making, we run like with the 3 best semester tests. The regression, the results were the same as before. They were insignificant. However, yeah. So what I want to take, what I think is very interesting, and this got me taken actually, that so the differences here are not significant. Statistically speaking, but what is interesting is the hybrid group, like the sign of it was negative in this part, and for the final test it became positive, but still statistically insignificant. Now, I would argue that so when you are losing points throughout the whole semester, the mechanism that it works with is that you know that you're losing points. Because of that, you will learn more and you will earn a higher score. But for the final test, this will take into account because for the final test consists of materials in 4 seminar tests. So if I control for the results of the semester tests, I will get rid of this learning. So that's what I did. So I constructed the DAG here as well. So the argument is the following. We have some confounding variables, but the treatment itself works throughout 2 mechanisms for the scoring. There is this seminar learning, so learning for the seminar tests, and learning for the exam. Now, if I include the results of the seminar tests in the regression, I will pretty much eliminate this effect, and I will only have this mechanism, which actually corresponds for learning for the exam, given the information that I'm going to lose or gain for the semester. So that's my argument for this specification. And actually, what we see here is very nice. So the effect of hybrid and loss is very similar to the game. So this is what actually we would expect. And this is also some suggestive evidence that so losing points is actually long-standing. So it's not just that, okay, I realize that I'm not losing points really, I'm just being reframed. The idea that if you have the information for the final exam that you're going to lose points is very similar for the 2 groups is I think it's very nice. What I did here, I did with 2 specifications. This one, when I included the scores with zeros for the final exams, and this I omitted the score, those who scored 0 at the final exam. And while the effect diminished, well, quite significantly, it was still significant at the 5% level, and here it was significant at the 10%. But again, these distributions are just getting closer. So this is like a lower bound effect, which is again around 5-6 percentage, which is still significant.
Have you tried it with the interaction of the semester test with the hybrid and or loss treatment? So what I'm thinking is that semester tests in fact have a different effect on the final test on the different treatment groups.
No, I haven't tried that.
I'm not sure. I mean, it might not have any effect on your main effects of the hybrid and loss.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, sure. For robustness test, I think at least for that, it would be useful. Yeah. Thank you. And finally, for testing heterogeneous gender effects, I pretty much did the same specification as before, but with an interaction with the treatments. And what I found that was the interaction in terms of loss. So I guess there is no evidence for heterogeneous gender effects. And yeah, pretty much that was the conclusion. I'm quite in time, so yeah, thank you very much for your attention.
I think this is something that needs to be asked, that to be faster understand where there was this question at the end of every statement.
Well, actually, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I might have missed that, but
The question is whether, I mean, it's a basic question, but whether what's the allocation of students into groups?
in the groups. So what we did was we sat down with the course leader and said that, okay, those teachers who had
What's the students, how do they, the students, how they choose these seminars? So it's a first come, first serve, whether they, I mean, this question is relevant. I mean, there is in fact a bunching of similar type of students into similar classes.
I mean, they could, in theory, well, they could choose whether the time slot is appropriate, or the teacher is appropriate, or the combination.
But it's a first come, first serve.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Depending on the information, the performance in other courses, or let's say comparable courses.
Yeah, not yet. So we don't have any information for that. We argued that, this information of knowing how to take derivatives takes into account some of that effect, not perfectly, but, yeah.
Maybe that could be informative about whether for specific students that was a semester when in which they worked hard or something. So,
Sure.
or something along those lines, I was asking, so whether there was some kind of selection to.
Sure. I mean, we have their Latin codes, but I'm not sure whether we can get the data from the administration. Yeah, that's a way issue.
The grade students are.
Sorry?
What grade students are second grade?
I think it's first year. Yeah.
Do you have information whether these students pay tuition or not?
Yeah, we actually asked them, but I don't think we included that in the question.
So actually two questions, whether they originally were admitted without tuition. And if this is is this a
First year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
That's the only question.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be. It could be interesting, if I recall correctly, like most of them were, like state funded or I don't know. How to call it. Yeah, scholarship, yeah. So they had scholarship for that. Yes.
You included the mother's education as a variable, but on the one hand, it was not significant as far as I remember, but on the other, it was very much negative.
Yes.
How would you explain that?
Yes, I was very surprised by that result actually. And I was trying to find some evidence on that, and there were some papers that argued that like from a certain point of level, mother's higher education could negatively affect the student's performance.
Is it a kind of an entitlement factor or?
Maybe, or you just, it's not that big of a deal if you're not the first university student in your family, and you don't giving that much information. But yeah, that's really an interesting thing, and I was really so good question, and I have to read about that.
This can be related to the tuition question. If you are from a poor family, getting a scholarship is much more important for you.
Right,
So,
right. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that could also.
And you will increase your efforts.
Yeah, so maybe that's the effect that we're seeing there. Yeah.
Maybe instead of, sorry.
So maybe it's worth to look at the heterogeneity by tuition or scholarships.
Good point, good point.
Maybe instead of mother's education, you should only use the fifth listed the first in family, so whether the mother has a diploma or not, so don't go for the full variance, just go for it. And so the mother had a.
Oh, yeah, that's what we're using.
Oh, yeah, so that's the mother's
But,
education.
yeah, that's mother's education is at least university level. So that's the value of the using. But again, 75% of the students have that, so.
I'm sorry, you mentioned that whether they are scholarship students or non-scholarship students matter, but I think if I understand correctly, in Corvinus, this thing gets updated, right? So even if you are entitled to get a scholarship right now, you might lose it if you're not working hard.
Right.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's the point. But again, they are first year students, so they have, I think it's like revisited every 1 year, yeah. Yes.
So 30 students didn't show up to the final exam in your
Yeah,
sample?
in total, yeah, and most of them were actually like, okay, so I think around 40% or 50% of them were in the main group. And that's why I included them in the main regression, because I don't know whether that's a bug or a feature. So yeah, but for robust stack checks, that's why I excluded them.
Okay, and a second question would be the gender interactions. Did you do a power calculation? Because I mean, the direction is what you'd expect, but the standard errors are huge.
Yeah. I haven't done that yet, so yeah, I might have to do that. So-
There were some relatively high parameters, just. Yeah.
Right.
So these are students who took this class for the first time, all of them.
Like 95% of them. So there was very little variance in those who took it for a second time.
But you didn't exclude those.
No, I did not. I did not.
This is related to the power question, can you repeat the experiment, so. I guess it's not too much cost to do that again.
I mean. For me, certainly. I was getting a lot of hiccups when this was running, because the teachers had to grade it in a negative, and that's so, yeah, I would really like to do that, and actually, I would like to do it in a way that that wholly endowment effect. So actually, in the first period, they're getting 40 points and then losing those for 40 points. So I think that would be very interesting. Okay, that would be for our next project.
When the referee asks.
Right.
So what's your policy conclusion? Should everybody use this loss strategy?
I mean, right now, I don't see any heterogeneous effects. So in that case, sure, I would say that. However, I would be very cautious, because still, even if it's ran for one semester, it's still relatively uncertain. And I don't know whether if this becomes the standard for 10 years, then the effect will still persist. So
If you run the experiment ever again, you should check the teachers' evaluations as well. Because I could actually imagine that, teachers rating minus points for at the end would receive also lower. So they're serious in this one.
So what I did was I included the teachers as dummies in the recommendation.
I'm not talking about the result.
Oh, right.
But this effect is probably good for student learning, but as for the teacher's side, they might lose, but because students would not like them that much if they were handing out negative points.
Maybe this is a stressful process for the students who are losing.
I mean,
Yeah,
you said
sure.
yourself that
I mean,
teachers were complaining about it.
So sure, and there is also evidence, like when I was arguing at the beginning, that so they ran similar experiments for psychology students and business students in the US, and what they found that it was a very unpleasant experience to do this. However, they saw the effect of it, but still they said that this is not very enjoyable. Yes.
So just relating to the thing is, like, in case of the group that has the loss throughout the year, I can expect that they were learning. So like the first time I saw -5 on my homework or whatever test, and for the next time I will learn more. But in case of the hybrid class, the thing is, like, the whole semester they didn't learn this, and then someone just told me, okay, now write the test, they will get -points and not pass. I don't care. At the end of the day, I will get a grade, right? So I will get from 1 to 5 or A to C or whatever. It's a grade. I don't care about the points, no? So I don't really care about whether my points are calculated in a minus or in a positive grade. I mean, in case of the learning, I do care because it's a psychology
Right.
cost. But if it's only a single test, then I don't see what I would do in that case. But what I really expect is that teachers grade differently. And could you test that? So you still have the exams, right? So that ones that were negatively pointed, so using the loss, you can give it to different teachers and regrade them with a positive grade. Whether they get the same grade, the same test. When they correct it in one way, they correct it in the other way. If they don't get the same grade than what we see here, and that's my expectation in case of the hybrid class, is not the students learning, it's the teachers grading.
Yes. So
Same grading, so they different.
Yeah, of course, but there could be a systematic difference now. What you say could be a random, but this could be a different, and this one you can.
I mean, the argument
kind of
was
cheaply test, right? You still have to test. Well, it's cheaper than we run the whole thing, right?
I mean, the
And you
issue.
can write a 7-page.
So my counter argument is that, so there are very different tests, so for each seminar, there were different tests. And all the tests were standardized.
She's
So-
saying we're fine.
No, I'm
So
sorry,
just for the final test.
for the hybrid class especially, because the hybrid class, the hybrid group
Mhm.
did not learn during the semester the physical cost of having the negative point. And at the end of the day, I don't really care if there is -5 or 45 points on that. I graded, at the end of the day, I get a
Right.
grade A or B or whatever, and I don't care about my points. But so in the hybrid class, I'm very surprised if you see any effect and it's not the teacher. I would be working back.
I mean, so here I'm losing your points. You work hard, you have now endowment and you are losing it, so it's, it can be.
Well, but I don't
There
learn,
is- there can
the-
be-
but I don't learn the physical cost of that, like in the losing class, I do see, because in the first test, I see a -5 there, so, oh my God, that's harsh, I mean, -5 there. So for the next test, I will learn more, and for the final test, you know, I again put more effort, because I feel the physical, the physical cost of having this, but for the fact, for the group, throughout the year, got positive feedbacks, right?
I mean, this,
They don't learn this.
including the seminar test scores kind of gets rid of this effect, I think.
No, for the teaching grade, no. The teaching grade is only if you re-evaluate all the tests again.
But then related to this, how salient did you make that you will lose the hybrid, you will lose points here? So did you write them like a warning that be prepared, or it was just in test that they saw that, okay, now it's.
I mean, so there was, it was in the syllabus, it was in the Excel sheet. So, and actually, before they wrote the final test, they should be seeing that, okay, they have 40 points, and they saw that their total accordingly. So they were pretty much could calculate that, okay, I have 78 points. So.
So in the hybrid class, they also earned them and lost during the whole semester.
Yeah, yes, so
Mhm.
they earned throughout the semester, and at the final one, they just lost points, that's what the difference. Yeah.
Do you have any chance to look at different types of heterogeneities? I mean, not by gender, but I don't know. I mean, I would be very much interested in heterogeneity by, you know, whether someone is a good student or a bad student. I understand that in this setting, you can't do that without any external information.
Mhm,
For an external, it would be nice to know something about, I don't know,
mhm.
if it's in the second semester, maybe first semester GP or something.
Mhm.
And I was wondering whether you can use anything from your starting survey to get different types of opportunities.
Mhm. Yeah. Good thing, I was thinking about doing like some kind of quantile regression to run on different, like, 20% of the gradings. Yeah, I think we could do that. We could look into that, this would be interesting. Yeah.
Jó, akkor másik.